In a small village nestled in the heart of Africa, where the sun rises over the savanna and paints the sky with hues of crimson and gold, there lived a young girl named Nola. She was a bright and curious student, loved by all her teachers and classmates. Nola's life was filled with joy and wonder as she explored the world around her. Her daily walk to school took her through the bustling market, where colorful fabrics and juicy fruits filled the air. Nola's school was a place of discovery and growth, where she learned about the rich history and culture of her people. As Nola went about her daily routine, she began to notice that all her male teachers seemed to be paying her extra attention. They would often find excuses to be near her, and some even made inappropriate comments. The other girls in the school seemed to be aware of this, but no one spoke out. Nola tried to brush it off as mere friendliness, but deep down, she felt a growing sense of unease. She couldn't help but wonder why her teachers were behaving in such a way. Was it because she was a good student, or was there something more to it? Nola's mind was filled with questions, but she didn't know who to turn to for answers. Her parents were always busy with work, and her friends seemed just as confused as she was. As the days went by, the attention from her teachers only intensified. They would touch her arm or shoulder while talking to her, and some even made suggestive comments about her appearance. Nola felt like she was walking on eggshells, never knowing when someone would make a move or say something inappropriate. The other girls in the school seemed to be dealing with similar issues. They would whisper to each other in the hallways, sharing stories of unwanted advances and inappropriate behavior. But whenever Nola tried to join in, they would quickly change the subject or tell her to be quiet. Nola felt like she was all alone in this struggle. She didn't know who to trust or where to turn for help. She began to doubt herself, wondering if she was somehow to blame for the attention she was receiving. Maybe she was dressing too provocatively, or maybe she was being too friendly. But deep down, Nola knew that none of this was her fault. She was just a student, trying to learn and grow in a safe and supportive environment. She didn't deserve to be treated like this, and she knew that she needed to do something to stop it. As the tension built, Nola's anxiety grew. She would lie awake at night, thinking about all the things that could go wrong. What if one of her teachers tried to take things too far? What if she was punished for speaking out? What if no one believed her? The fear and uncertainty were suffocating, making it hard for Nola to breathe. She felt like she was trapped in a never-ending nightmare, with no escape in sight. But she knew that she couldn't give up. She had to find a way to overcome this, to rise above the challenges and create a better future for herself. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she was determined to try. She started by talking to her friends, trying to gather support and advice. But she soon realized that she needed to do more, to take a stand and make her voice heard. She decided to speak out against the harassment, to tell her story and share her experiences. It was a scary and daunting task, but she knew it was necessary. She knew that she wasn't alone, that there were others out there who had gone through similar experiences. And she knew that by speaking out, she could help create change and make a difference. So she took a deep breath, gathered her courage, and began to speak out. She told her story, shared her experiences, and demanded justice and change. And as she spoke, she felt a sense of empowerment and liberation. She knew that she had found her voice, and that she would no longer be silenced. She had taken the first step towards creating a better future, and she was determined to see it through. The journey ahead would be long and challenging, but Nola was ready. She had found her voice, and she would use it to create change and make a difference. As Nola continued to speak out against the harassment, she began to face obstacles and complications. She was met with resistance from some of her teachers and classmates, who didn't want to believe that such behavior was happening in their school. They would tell her that she was being too sensitive, or that she was making a big deal out of nothing. But Nola knew that she wasn't alone, and that there were others who had experienced similar harassment. She began to wonder if the school administration was taking her complaints seriously, or if they were just trying to sweep the issue under the rug. What do you think Nola should do in this situation, and how can she ensure that her voice is heard? As she navigated the complex web of relationships and power dynamics within the school, Nola encountered more and more challenges. She faced backlash from some of her peers, who accused her of being a troublemaker or a liar. She even received threatening messages, warning her to drop the issue and move on. But Nola refused to back down, even in the face of such intimidation. She knew that she had the right to speak out, and that her voice mattered. What do you think is the most important thing for Nola to remember as she continues to fight for justice, and how can she stay strong in the face of adversity? As the tension builds and the stakes grow higher, Nola must confront the possibility that her actions may have unintended consequences. What if her speaking out leads to more harm than good, or what if she loses the support of her friends and allies? How can Nola balance her desire for justice with the potential risks and challenges that come with it, and what do you think is the most important thing for her to consider as she moves forward? As Nola navigates this complex and uncertain landscape, she must also confront her own doubts and fears. What if she's not strong enough, or what if she's not doing enough? How can Nola overcome her own self-doubt and stay focused on her goals, and what do you think is the most important thing for her to remember as she continues on her journey? The day of reckoning had finally arrived, and Nola's world was about to be turned upside down. She had gathered all her courage and decided to speak out against the unwanted attention, and she reported Mr. Kofi's behavior to the school administration. But to her surprise, the administration seemed to be more interested in protecting the teacher's reputation than in supporting Nola. It was as if they were saying, "How dare you question the actions of a respected teacher?" Nola felt a wave of emotions wash over her: shock, anger, disappointment, and betrayal. How could they do this to her? Didn't they care about her well-being? Didn't they believe her? She had thought that the school administration was there to support and protect her, but now she realized that they were just as complicit in the harassment as the teachers. Nola felt like she was all alone, with no one to turn to. She wondered if she had made a mistake by speaking out, if she should have just kept quiet and suffered in silence. But then she remembered why she had spoken out in the first place: to stand up for herself, to fight for her rights, and to create a safer and more just environment for all students. What do you think Nola should do next, and how would you react if you were in her shoes? Should she continue to fight, even if it means facing more resistance and backlash? Or should she retreat, and try to find a way to cope with the harassment on her own? The decision was not an easy one, and Nola knew that whatever she chose, it would have far-reaching consequences. As she stood there, Weighing her options, Nola realized that she was not just fighting for herself, but for all the other students who had been silenced, marginalized, and oppressed. She was fighting for a world where students could learn and grow without fear of harassment, bullying, or intimidation. And with that realization, Nola knew what she had to do. She took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The question was, would she be able to overcome the obstacles and achieve her goals, or would the system prove too powerful to change? As Nola stood tall, ready to face the challenges ahead, she knew that she would need all her strength and courage to overcome the obstacles that lay in her path. She thought about all the times she had been belittled, marginalized, and silenced, and she knew that she couldn't let that happen again. She thought about all the people who had doubted her, dismissed her, and ignored her, and she knew that she had to prove them wrong. She thought about all the students who were still suffering in silence, and she knew that she had to be their voice, their advocate, and their champion. With a newfound sense of purpose and determination, Nola began to take action. She started by organizing a petition, calling on the school administration to take concrete steps to address the harassment and bullying. She rallied her friends and classmates, and together they formed a coalition to support and empower each other. She met with teachers and administrators, demanding that they take responsibility for creating a safe and inclusive learning environment. And she refused to back down, even when faced with resistance, criticism, and backlash. As Nola's movement gained momentum, she began to inspire others to join her. Students from all over the school began to share their own stories of harassment and bullying, and together they formed a powerful and collective voice. Teachers and administrators began to take notice, and slowly but surely, they started to make changes. The school began to feel like a safer, more inclusive, and more just place, and Nola knew that she had played a key role in making that happen. But as she looked out at the crowd of students, teachers, and administrators, Nola knew that there was still much work to be done. There were still students who were suffering in silence, still teachers who were unaware or unresponsive, and still administrators who were resistant to change. And so, Nola knew that she couldn't stop now. She had to keep pushing, keep fighting, and keep advocating for a world where all students could learn and grow without fear of harassment, bullying, or intimidation. The question was, would she be able to sustain her momentum, and would she be able to create lasting change? As Nola stood at the forefront of the movement, she knew that she had to be strategic and intentional about the next steps. She began to meet with school administrators, pushing them to implement concrete policies and procedures to address harassment and bullying. She worked with teachers to develop training programs, ensuring that they had the tools and resources they needed to create safe and inclusive classrooms. And she continued to rally students, empowering them to speak out and demand change. But despite the progress, Nola knew that there were still those who were resistant to change. There were teachers who didn't want to change their ways, administrators who were more concerned with image than action, and students who were afraid to speak out. Nola knew that she had to find a way to reach them, to convince them that change was necessary and possible. She began to share her own story, to speak out about the harassment and bullying she had faced, and to explain how it had affected her. She shared the stories of other students, highlighting the impact that harassment and bullying had on their lives and well-being. And she presented data and research, demonstrating the effectiveness of policies and programs that addressed harassment and bullying. Slowly but surely, Nola began to win over some of the skeptics. Teachers began to see the importance of creating safe and inclusive classrooms. Administrators began to take concrete steps to address harassment and bullying, and students began to feel more empowered to speak out. But just as it seemed like the movement was gaining momentum, a new challenge emerged. A group of parents, concerned about the impact of the movement on the school's reputation, began to push back against the changes. They argued that the movement was going too far, that it was creating a culture of fear and intimidation, and that it was undermining the authority of teachers and administrators. Nola knew that she had to respond, to address the concerns of the parents and to reassure them that the movement was about creating a safer and more inclusive school for all students. But as she stood at the forefront of the movement, she couldn't help but wonder, would she be able to overcome this new challenge, or would it derail the progress that had been made? As Nola stood at the forefront of the movement, she knew that she had to find a way to address the concerns of the parents and to reassure them that the movement was about creating a safer and more inclusive school for all students. She began to meet with the parents, listening to their concerns and addressing their questions. She explained that the movement was not about creating a culture of fear and intimidation, but about creating a culture of respect and empathy. She shared stories of students who had been impacted by harassment and bullying, and she highlighted the importance of creating a safe and inclusive environment for all students. Slowly but surely, the parents began to understand the movement and its goals. They began to see that the movement was not about undermining the authority of teachers and administrators, but about creating a more just and equitable school community. As the parents' concerns were addressed, the movement began to gain even more momentum. More and more students began to speak out, sharing their own stories and experiences. More and more teachers and administrators began to take concrete steps to address harassment and bullying. And more parents began to support the movement, recognizing the importance of creating a safe and inclusive school community. As the movement continued to grow and evolve, Nola knew that she had to stay focused and committed. She knew that there would be more challenges ahead, more obstacles to overcome. But she also knew that she was not alone, that she had a community of supporters and allies who were committed to creating a safer and more inclusive school for all students. And with that knowledge, Nola felt a sense of hope and optimism, a sense that the movement was on the verge of something big. The question was, what would happen next? Would the movement continue to grow and evolve, or would it face new challenges and setbacks? What would happen next? Would the movement continue to grow and evolve, or would it face new challenges and setbacks? As Nola and her community waited with bated breath, they knew that the outcome was far from certain. But one thing was clear, the movement had already achieved something remarkable. It had brought together students, teachers, and parents from all walks of life, united in their quest for a safer and more inclusive school community. It had given voice to those who had been silenced, and it had created a space for marginalized students to speak out and demand justice. And it had shown that even in the face of adversity, a small group of dedicated individuals could create real and lasting change. And so, dear friends, we come to the end of our tale. What do you think is the most important message from Nola's story, and how can we use it to create a more just and equitable society? Remember, the power to create change lies within us, And it starts with speaking out against injustice and supporting those who are marginalized. As we reflect on Nola's journey, we are reminded that creating a safer and more inclusive community is not just a moral imperative, but a collective responsibility. We are reminded that every individual has the power to make a difference, and that even the smallest actions can have a profound impact. And we are reminded that the struggle for justice and equality is ongoing, and that we must continue to work together to create a world that is truly just and equitable for all. As we close this chapter, we ask you to take a moment to reflect on Nola's story, and to think critically about the themes and morals that have emerged. What can we learn from Nola's courage and resilience, and how can we apply those lessons to our own lives and communities? How can we use Nola's story to inspire and empower others, and to create a ripple effect of change that spreads far and wide? And what will you do, dear friends, to create a safer and more inclusive community, and to ensure that every individual has the opportunity to thrive and reach their full potential? The power is in your hands, and the time to act is now.